You enter a boxing gym for your first day of training, and coach says, get in your fighting stance. Naturally, as a right-handed person, you may stand in the southpaw stance. I'm sure you've seen this stance in a YouTube street fight compilation. Often, naturally as right-handed people, we will put our lead hand in front in our stance. It makes sense in theory, putting our strongest weapon closest to the target. But then when coach comes over and you tell him it's your first day, he'll ask, what's your strong hand? And when you answer right-handed, he will adjust your stance and tell you to put the power hand in the back. The logic in that is sound as well. Most power shots are thrown with the rear hand, so putting your power hand there will result in more powerful punching. The problem arises when all you do from that point forward is train in the orthodox stance. You become so accustomed to fighting in one stance that when you go back to what felt natural at the start, it feels foreign and uncomfortable. So today I will go over 3 benefits to fighting with your power hand in front, showcasing Terence Crawford, a naturally right-handed person who has been fighting mostly southpaw for his last few fights, and using this style just cemented his legacy as one of boxing's all-time greats. Counterpunching. When counterpunching, one of the best counters is a lead check hook. As the great Jack Slack speaks about in his Filthy Casuals Guide to Alex Ferreira, the lead hook is at its best on the counter because the most power can be generated when the weight is transferred from your lead to your back foot. So with that knowledge, you can understand why having your power hand in this position can be very beneficial. Crawford was constantly interrupting Errol Spence's offense with counter lead hooks that were doing significant damage. The coordination and comfortability you have with your dominant hand allows for counterpunching to come much more natural as well as powerful. Your opponent won't expect the same kind of power on a lead hook as he might for a counter coming back from the rear hand. Another factor which further supports putting your power hand in front is when you ask yourself, when do the most vicious knockouts occur? The answer would be when counterpunching. If your opponent is thinking about offense and leaning forward trying to throw a big shot, it won't take much power for a well-placed counterpunch to really floor them. You see here a perfect demonstration of this. Spence loads up a big left overhand, which looks like it could do a lot of damage. It actually lands pretty good on Crawford, but suddenly Spence goes down. In real-time speed, it is very difficult to catch, but Crawford times a beautiful, tight, counter lead shovel hook. The punch is not thrown with the same momentum or load up as Spence's punch, and if you saw the 2 punches side by side, you'd probably guess that the Spence punch would be harder. But what makes Crawford's punch the one to cause a knockdown is that Spence's momentum was driving towards the punch. Just as I spoke about in my last video, an interrupting strike will always do more damage than a regular one. And another big factor is if you can see the strike and brace for it. You see Crawford sees the incoming punch and braces, while Spence is worried solely about landing his own and doesn't expect the short, tight counter. The jab. If you were to ask any boxing coach what the most important punch is, they would almost unanimously say the jab.
And the jab is so important because, well, it's kind of like having a flashlight to go places, to see into dark places. That's what the jab does. It leads the way.
With the understanding of the importance of the jab, perhaps it would make some sense to assign your most important punch to your power hand. For a style that relies heavily upon the jab, putting more sting and comfortability in the punch by using your power hand is certainly a good plan. Of course, this will sacrifice some power from your rear hand, but since mechanically, a punch thrown with your backhand will have more power than one thrown with your lead hand, your weaker left hand will be getting a buffer of sorts by being thrown from the rear hand position. Additionally, just as the more you train all your strikes, the more powerful they get, the more you train in the stance where your power hand is in front, the more comfortable and powerful you will become throwing your less dominant hand as a rear. Adaptability. I've done a whole video about the benefits of switch hitting where I covered just a few of its benefits in the context of the JDM versus Bilal fight. But one of the biggest benefits, which I didn't speak on in that video, is adaptability. The ability to adapt your stance given your opponent's strengths or weaknesses. For example, Errol Spence was a southpaw who was very used to fighting orthodox fighters. Crawford was able to go southpaw and present problems to Spence that he wasn't used to. This ability to see which stance your opponent may have trouble with allows you so much more adaptability than that of a single stance fighter. The adaptability doesn't just stop in the preparation. Say you thought that your opponent would be susceptible against a southpaw, but before the fight, they sparred with only southpaws and are getting the better of you in the bout. To be able to switch back to a stance where your power hand is in the back and you have comfortability out of that stance, it could completely freeze your opponent as everything they have prepared for now has to change. This is more of a comment on why switch hitting is so beneficial to train, but say you are an orthodox fighter right now and you train exclusively in orthodox. Start working on the bag from the southpaw stance, and when you are comfortable enough, start to try it in your sparring. Of course, it'll take time to get better like any skill, but in the long run, it will be massively worth it. So today we discussed the secret of Crawford being a right-handed southpaw, along with the 3 benefits that emerge from this style. They were counterpunching, the jab, and adaptability. I hope you enjoyed, and even though you may lose some rounds in sparring, start trying to work on that weaker stance of yours so you can become an absolute killer like Terence Crawford.